here in a dream. I'm just stuck here in a dream.
Welcome to the Guns and Yoga podcast. My name is Wendy Hummel. Today you're going to hear a conversation that I had with Karen Solomon, a pioneer on the first responder wellness front. Karen is the founder of H.E.L.P, which is a nonprofit organization that started tracking law enforcement suicides back in 2016. The organization also aims to help reduce mental health stigma by way of education, advocating for benefits for those suffering from PTS, acknowledge the service and sacrifice of law enforcement officers we lost to suicide, support families after suicide, and bring awareness to suicide and mental health issues. Karen tells us how H.E.L.P was created because of a gap she identified to support surviving police families who lost a loved one to suicide. So she began to send care packages to these families, and she began tracking the number of law enforcement suicides. Karen tells the story of how she connected with other police officers by way of an online police wives group, since she herself is married to a police officer. This connection and Karen's personal experience with suicide led her to write 2 books, Hearts Beneath a Badge and The Price That They Pay, and expanding H.E.L.P to First H.E.L.P, which began tracking fire, paramedic, and telecommunicator suicides last year. She's a national speaker, advocate for federal legislation that impacts suicide survivor families, and a contributing columnist to several first responder publications. I recently had the opportunity to take training offered by First H.E.L.P. A colleague of mine with the fire department arranged for this free training to come to my area in Wichita, Kansas. Responder Readiness is an 8-hour course that First H.E.L.P offers to agencies upon request, which is completely free of charge. Check the website for further information and other training that they offer. The trainer, Mike Murata, is a United States Air Force veteran and a veteran law enforcement officer. He spent the day discussing stress and trauma, and more importantly, the tools that we can implement to optimize our performance. I really enjoyed this class and speaking with Mike. And as always, I really enjoy talking to people who like to commit to first responder mental health and wellness. And Mike is definitely one of those people. First H.E.L.P is a top-notch organization committed to serving first responders and their families. I hope you enjoy this episode and understand that one person truly can make a difference. Karen will tell you that she doesn't do it alone, but she's an integral part of the organization. The impact and ripple effect of her work will never really truly be known. Welcome to the show, Karen.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm really happy to have you here today. You're somebody who I've been wanting to have on my podcast for quite some time, so this is great.
Thank you. I always find that funny when, officers and, people say to me, oh, I wanted to talk to you. I'm like, why do you want to talk to me? So
you're awesome.
No, it's just funny when people say that because we're just doing our thing and it's just funny to us. That's all.
Well, I get it. But in all seriousness, I was telling you before I hit record that, a lot of what you do, it wasn't being done before. It wasn't really being talked about before. And it's so helpful to be able to have a resource to direct people to, not just like, here's the numbers, but here's information, here's what you can do. So that's why people are so impressed by it.
Thanks.
So today, what I'd love for you to talk about, obviously all of the things, right? But I want to know what kind of inspired Karen Solomon to come up with or start H.E.L.P. I know you're also an author, you're married to a police officer, but how did all of this start?
Yeah, so it was the books. So I'm not really an author. I wrote 2 books, but I've never written in my life until I wrote the 2 books. So I don't consider myself an author. I guess technically I am because I wrote books, but so after Ferguson, the incident in Ferguson, I got, that was a catalyst for a lot of things, so I got very frustrated. And I wanted to do something good for my friends that were police officers, for my husband, for my family that were police officers. So I wrote a book called Hearts Beneath the Badge. And it was really about all the good things that police officers do. And then that book led to another book called The Price They Pay, which I wrote with one of our co-founders, Jeff McGill. And that was about all the trauma they go through. Because after the first book, these officers started saying, well, what about all the bad stuff that happens to us? What about this? What about that? And as I was listening to them and researching, I realized they didn't know how to get mental help. And then I also realized how badly they are treated if they ask for help. And then I found out how poorly we treat the families after a suicide. So Jeff, and Steve Huff, he's the other co-founder. Steve and Jeff are partners down in Okaloosa County, Florida, when Steve got shot in the face serving a warrant and he almost died. So the three of us, I just said, hey, we got to do something. And we said, let's just start counting suicides year over year. And it started as a really simple, let's just have a website where we count suicides. And it evolved into so much more because there was this huge gap, not just in terms of recording the suicides year over year because that hadn't been done before we were doing it, but also offering support to the families and training and resources. So that all just kind of steamrolled out of this one idea. Let's just raise the red flag and put the number out there and hope that somebody does something about it. And 6 years later, we're still doing something about it.
Yeah, I would say so. And so backing up just a little bit, maybe I missed it. How did you know these guys that were, because
Oh,
you're in a different part of the country.
it's a funny story. So actually, I was part of a police wives group, an online group. I've been married to a cop for 15 years, and I got literally got bored and joined this group one night, and I started talking to these ladies. I had actually been kicked out of a number of police wives groups because I tend to be very outspoken. And this one was a cool group and it was small and I just became really friendly with the people there. So one of the women there, she is Steve's sister-in-law. And when I decided to write this book, she said, "Oh, you should talk to my brother-in-law. He got shot in the face." And I said, "Oh, great, let me talk to him." And I did, and I talked to Steve and Jeff, and then we became friends on the phone and online. And then after we wrote the second book, I went down there to stay, and my husband's like, "You're just gonna go stay with these people that you've never met before?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going. I know. I've talked to their wives, you know." So it was just kind of a weird story. If you ask them, they will say I stalked them, but I didn't. It was just kind of a collaborative. We just clicked, from the get go.
Yeah,
So
gotcha. So all of this just kind of happened online from this police wives groups. And so what did your husband have any input into the book or have anything to do with any of this stuff? Like, what did he think when you were like, "Hey, I'm going to do this"?
yeah, he wasn't. My husband, he flies under the radar. He does his job. He follows the rules and the letter of the law, and I kind of skirt the the law and a lot of other things. So he was a little uh, hesitant because I was moving into his space um, and because he doesn't like to be out in the spotlight, and this kind of put him there. When he's in service training now, he's like, "Hey, guess who we talked about again today? Karen Solomon in Blue Helm." So, um, it's the opposite of what my nephew will come and like, "Auntie, we talked about you again today. It's really cool." But so it wasn't easy for him because he's not. He doesn't bring the job home. We're not one of those police families that advertise that we're police families, or there's just different styles of law enforcement families, and we're the quieter type. Well, we were
Sure,
until this happened, but we still don't flaunt it. We just try to make a difference. So it was tough.
sure.
It was a tough adjustment for him.
So how is it now? I mean, is he
Oh, now
pretty
it's
much
better.
adapted? Okay.
Yeah, and now he has to adapt. He used to be hesitant. No, you're not going to those conferences. You're not going there and hanging out with 300 cops, and so. And now he's just like, whatever. How many guys are hanging out with this weekend, Karen? He just laughs about it now because he knows what I'm doing, and he knows that it's meaningful, and he gets it. He
Sure.
understands. Yeah. So it's easier, but it's still hard for him when I do travel a lot more than probably I would like to. And it takes a lot of my time, but he's on board with it. He's very supportive.
That's great. Because typically, like when you hear of people that are involved in certain organizations, like there's a reason for it. And it sounds like for you, it was just you felt like there was this need, you saw a gap and you needed it, and it was kind of something that you felt called to do. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but was there anything else going on behind the scenes that kind of led you to become interested in doing the work that you're doing?
It really was just that whole frustration factor of seeing how badly, and then thinking, oh my God, if this comes to my house, is this how crappy they're going to treat me too? Is this how badly my husband is going to be treated if he needs help, or my stepfather, or my stepbrother, or my brother-in-law, or my, anybody else who's in this profession? And just, it was really crappy to see. And then having having had attempted suicide in my early 20s, I know what it's like to
Mm.
be there. So for me, it was kind of like, I get it. And I thinks this whole situation stinks, because we glorify so much in law enforcement and um, mental health. We treat so poorly and think of it so negatively. So just when you hear these family stories and their heartbreak and their heartache and the desperation of the officers, you feel like you need to do something. And like I said, at the
Yeah.
time, nobody else was doing anything. And I not nobody, but it wasn't to the scale it is today. 6 years ago, things have changed since we've started this. They've changed significantly. 6 years ago, it was hard to find a resource. 6 years ago, it was hard to find a conference. There weren't wellness programs. So nobody was talking about how many. They weren't talking about the number. And now they are. There's so much legislation that has been passed, the Law Enforcement Suicide Data Collection Act, the support that we offer the survivors, just tremendous amount of progress.
Yeah, it's amazing how far you've come even since you started. I mean,
Yeah.
really, it sounds like you continue to grow, which we were talking about before we started. So, if you could just kind of let people know who have been living under a rock and they don't know what Blue Help is or what they do,
Yeah.
maybe just explain a little bit about Blue Help and then now kind of what's grown from Blue Help, what we were talking about first help.
Sure. So when we started again, it was just to raise the red flag, and we put up a website, we put a ticker on our website, and people could submit web suicides to us. We would scour the internet, we would contact people, we would try to verify those suicides through talking to people. We don't pull death certificates and things like that because you need permission from the family, and it gets expensive. And we believe the families and the departments when they tell us it was a suicide. There has been no instances where there hasn't been a suicide. We found out later that it wasn't. So we verified them from multiple sources. So then we said, okay, let's just kind of make this like an Officer Down memorial page where you can go there and honor your loved one who died by suicide. So we put their name and their face on our website, and with a memorial, just like Officer Down Memorial page does for line of duty. And we actually work with ODMP because they get suicides and they forward the suicides to us because they can't go on their
Oh, good.
website. Yeah, so that's really cool. That's a cool relationship. So then we found that, so that was 2016. In 2017, we found that there weren't a lot of mental health conferences and there weren't any resources for the families. So we started sending out care packages after suicide. So when anybody submitted to us, when anybody submits to us now, it doesn't matter what year the suicide was. It doesn't matter if the suicide was 20 years ago. They will get a care package from us with some really specially chosen items by one of our widows. They get some beautiful wind chimes that the families absolutely love. They get a photo frame, a journal. They get a bunch of stuff that we've crafted over the years and kind of perfected. So they get a beautiful box, and they also get a beautiful blanket with their loved one's name embroidered in it with their end of watch date. So again, doesn't matter when the suicide was. If it's the first time we're finding it out, you get a care package and a blanket right out of the gate. No questions asked, no cost to you, no nothing. So then we had the conference in 2016, 17. We started sending out care packages, and then we said, hey, why don't we have, when you look at what COPS does for line of duty, we said, why don't we do all that stuff? Let's have retreats. Let's have an annual dinner. So our first annual dinner was in 2019 at Police Week, and it wasn't as well received as we would have liked because it's police week, and people feel that it's for line of duty when it's truly not. If you read the proclamation for police week, it's about more than line of duty. So there's absolutely no reason why those families shouldn't and can't be honored, and they actually have started in recent years honoring families. There's a group that's associated with the H.E.L.P. I don't know who does it. They pick one family each year to go lay a rose, so they get to include suicide, which is fantastic. But it should be more than that at this point in time. But that was our first annual dinner where we honored the service. We pay all the expenses, their airfare, their any travel expenses, their hotel, their meals, everything while they're there, because suicide doesn't get benefits. They don't get payouts. like line of duty does. They don't get anything. So they can't afford to go to these events otherwise. So we pay for everything. So they come to this dinner. We have photos of their loved ones that they get to take home in a frame with their name on it, and we have just a wonderful weekend where they can spend time with other families who have suffered the same loss, and we have events for them, and it's a really beautiful thing. So that went up to a camp now. It's called Camp April, for a retreat for the kids under 17. So now we have retreats for the kids who are under 17. We have events for adult siblings, adult children, parents, spouses, and significant others. And we also have the annual honor dinner. And last year we had, it was 4 days long. It was fantastic. We integrated the camp with the dinner, so it was crazy. It was 4 days of just, it was just fantastic. Um, so then we also have college scholarships for kids who lose a first responder parent to suicide. So similar, again, we have tried to mimic everything that line of duty death families get. Obviously, not on as big of a scale. We don't take in that kind of money, but we do what we can. We offer financial assistance where we can. Last Christmas, we filled 77 wish lists for Christmas for families who can't afford Christmas. So we do whatever we can. And we send out special gifts once a year just to remind them that we're thinking of them and stuff like that. So that's really how we've evolved, and we've been very lucky to have partners like FirstNet, built by AT&T, Motorola, Axon, the Gary Sinise Foundation has helped us out. So we've had some tremendous support to get these things done. And this year we are doing just a ton of free training for first responders, responder readiness training, and family readiness, and supervisor readiness, and that's all funded by FirstNet, by AT&T. So that's a great thing. If you go to our website, you click on the training tab, and you can see all of them coming up. I don't even know how many there are. There's a lot. I lost count. And we partner with first responder conferences to do first responder conferences. So that's Blue Help in a nutshell. Just a lot of the stuff that we do, and then what we also send out care packages to the departments after a suicide, and we've just revamped those so they will include books and boxes of granola bars and different branded material for the departments when they lose an officer to suicide. So just to let them know we're thinking of them, and some brochures for
Wow.
resources. Yeah. So
That's incredible. I have a few questions because you
go.
you just said so much.
I told you I
So
could
so
talk.
yeah, you can. You definitely can. This is great. So I had to write it down so I wouldn't forget. So the first thing that you said was when you first started, you started keeping track, and then people will self-report to you if they've lost a loved one to suicide. But there's no legislation, there's no requirement for agencies to report that as of yet. Is that right? Or where
No,
are we at
that's
with
incorrect.
that?
Yep. So in 2020, President Trump passed the Law Enforcement Suicide Data Collection Act.
Okay,
However, it is not mandatory. So it
gotcha.
is the FBI is mandated to collect law enforcement suicide attempts and law enforcement suicide deaths for 2 years. They started on January 1st. It is not mandatory. You have to log into the portal at work. So families can't report. It has to be done by an officer or by a department, the investigating department. They have to log into the LEAP portal and have a LEAP number, ID number, and everything like that, and go in and report it. It takes all of about 5-10 minutes. They do have a lot of questions. It's a lot of the similar questions that we have. We collect a lot of data behind the scenes because we talk to the families, and obviously we get to know them, and we talk to the departments. So we get a lot of the backstory. It's not on the form because we didn't want to put it on the form. We figured we'd collect it as we went. But the LESDC has about 50 questions, and it asks about the history of the officer, if they've been involved in incidents, things like that, if the department has a wellness program. But it's slow going because it's slow to tick up. And it's funny because somebody said the other day, well, what's in it for me? Because if they report to Blue Help, they get support, they get all this other stuff. But when you submit to the FBI, there's no name submitted. You don't submit the officer name; it's anonymous, and it's a collection tool. It's very different. I don't know how to explain it. So for us, it's more about support, resources, awareness. For the FBI, it's about awareness and changing the future. So it's like LEOCA, law enforcement officers killed and assaulted. The more data they collect, the better they can implement programs. They're in front of Congress. We're not. So they can speak to Congress and say, here's the issue. But if they go to Congress and say, hey, we only have 10 suicides, and Congress says, well, Blue Help has 110, what's going on? Because people know who we are. They know our number. And that's, that is, our number is a driving force in a lot of these things and a lot of these changes, because people were just like, holy cow, it's really that high. And it's higher than what we're reporting. We know it's higher. But so there is now, the FBI is required to collect it, and anybody who's listening, I encourage you to go to the Law Enforcement Suicide Data Collection Act and look at it and report it to the FBI, and report it to us too for support. But we can't report it for you, so it's kind of a, why do I have to report it twice? Because we're not integrated with each other, the FBI and Blue Help. So it's two completely different collections for two completely different reasons. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, because LEOCA does it, COPS does it, ODMP does it. You can do it to multiple people. It only takes a few minutes.
So even if somebody reports it to you, they still need to get a hold of an agency somehow and say, hey, can you report this? Because it has to go through that agency. It can't even be the family member, right? Okay.
Not at this time, no. Mm-mm. And,
So
that's going to be, an issue.
Yeah. And my question is, like, how do you properly document, and maybe you're not really trying to capture this, retirees?
Oh, we get that. We capture retirees. So we do. So that's hard. And the LASDC also collects retirees, but that's difficult because we only collect them if the agency knows about it and they tell us, a friend knows about it, a family member. We're still not a household name. So it's not as if everybody comes to us immediately, So, but we do collect retirees. We absolutely do. I think about 10 to 12% of our number is retirees, but I'm sure that's higher,
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard to collect.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking as you were saying that, like, even for people to come to you and report it, but let alone also letting the FBI know also.
Oh, right. That's going to be hard. Yeah, because again, because you have to go through the LEAP portal, and if the department that they worked for doesn't know about it, or an agency doesn't know, if the investigating agency knows that it's a retired law enforcement officer and they choose to report it, then they can. Because there is going to be police presence on the site of every suicide, so they would know.
Right. So are there any other examples of agencies relying on you and collaborating with you to help to help pass other legislation? Is this so far what you've seen?
So the Cops Counseling Act recently went through for the, confidential, counseling for federal law enforcement officers. The big legislation that's out there right now, which I just wish it would pass, but I don't know that it will. The Public Safety Officers Benefits Act that offers line of duty death benefits, federal benefits, if you die in the line of duty or if you're injured in the line of duty. Well, there has now been an amendment. This is the third time it's been presented to offer to offer benefits, the same benefits to families who lose an officer to suicide, or to an officer who was injured on the duty with a mental injury. They would get the same benefits as a physical injury. So that's out there again this year. This year it was out there by Senator Duckworth, but previously it was Senator Trone and Senator Quigley, but they just can't seem to get it through. So there's new wording this year, reintroduced, and waiting to see what happens. And that's frustrating, because that is a big piece of legislation. It's not endorsed by everybody. It's a tough thing to get through, because people still don't want to pay to the family for a suicide. They somehow blame the family, or they're penalizing the family. They say it's not caused by the job, but I'll argue till I'm blue in the face that I can give you hundreds of instances where it's directly tied to the job. We have all of that information. And I can tell you, if you're going to claim heart attack, or you're going to claim heat stroke, and there's over 22 causes of line of duty deaths. I lost count at 22 a couple of years ago. So you're telling me that my husband, who runs 5 miles a day, he has a heart attack while he's at work, it's because of the job and he gets line of duty death benefits. I don't think so. No, I don't agree with that. I wholeheartedly don't, because he's fit, he's healthy, and just because he dies at work doesn't make it line of duty. So, you know, and I know that there's, he has to have had a stressful incident at work or whatever 24 hours before, but that still doesn't make it true. As if my husband was grossly overweight and ate McDonald's every day and died of a heart attack at work just because he ran a mile beforehand, doesn't make it so I get very it just, to me, it's you're talking, you're saying no to an emotional injury where somebody can be beaten down over the course of their career and depressed and have trauma and be just all kinds of other stuff, and you're saying no to that when it's clearly an emotional thing due to the job. Like I said, we can give you many cases, but you will say, hey, this arbitrary heart attack or heat stroke because they were outside directing traffic and didn't drink enough water, that's line of duty. That doesn't make any sense to me. It really doesn't. It doesn't. Slips and falls, accidental gun discharge, all those things that you call line of duty. If you accidentally discharge your gun on the job, you it's not a line of, you accidentally shot yourself. So how can that, do you know what I'm saying? It doesn't make any sense to me what they consider line of duty and not line of duty.
Well, I guess what's surprising more than anything is that all of the information that's out there, and that now we do have some research and evidence to show why it should be. And so I don't really understand what the disconnect is to be able to say, here's evidence, here's why this injury should be considered line of duty. This is the type of injury it is, and be able to show them proof and evidence of, MRI brain scans of somebody who has PTSD, different documentation. And just because you can't see it, like you can see a physical injury, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So I think a lot of people, it seems like more and more people know this. And so that it wouldn't be very difficult to get the right people to be able to explain it. So that's the hard part for me, is that we know better. We now know better, and we do have that information. So
Well, look at the military.
I'm with you.
The military
Mhm.
considers, the fire service now does, in many, many cases. So it's, I mean, and look at those families at the Capitol Police, that they
Oh
are
yeah.
not, my heart goes out to them, and I've talked to many of them, and it's really awful because they can tie it. There are specific circumstances around their death that are related to the job, and they can't get it line of duty. That doesn't make any sense. And you're right. With all the research that we have nowadays, people need to open their minds, and it goes back to this whole societal thing about suicide and the shame and the stigma, and that they did it to themselves. They didn't do it to themselves. They may have fired the final shot, but every moment up to that time, they didn't do to themselves. And again, we understand it's complicated. We understand there's more factors than the job. But at the end of the day, the job is a contributing factor, especially when the job is what prevents you from seeking help. So if you have issues, you do not get help because of the job, which obviously many officers don't, that is a contributing factor. Therefore, that is a line of duty death. End of story.
Yeah, it's I mean, I really hope that we see some change, and it would be nice if it happened this year.
It would be. I would be thrilled. I would be so happy. I'd be so happy for the families, and also because it would be retroactive to January 1st, 2019. So it would
Oh,
include,
good.
yeah, so that would be fantastic. Yeah, that would be great. I would love it. I'm fingers crossed, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll keep our fingers crossed, and I'm going to keep my eyes on that too. And like that's just another reason why, you said you were uncomfortable with everybody saying how great it is to meet you, but without you and without Blue Help, I mean, would we even be to the point where we're at with this legislation?
Yeah, I don't know. And I mean, maybe somebody else would have picked up the ball. I don't know. You can't say, but yeah.
Well, right, but you did. So, and again,
Yeah, we did.
kudos to
I mean,
you.
but we,
Yeah.
we just tried to do something. And I think too, it's Steve and Jeff and myself and the people that work with us every day. We just found the right group of people who we're not afraid to speak our minds. We're certainly not afraid to offend people because we've done that often enough. And we're not afraid to try things that nobody else has tried by putting their names and faces out there, by bringing the families forward, by giving them the support they haven't had. And I think that takes a certain amount of courage because we're bucking the system on a daily basis, and
Mhm.
We do not, we're not this huge political machine. We aren't a huge nonprofit either in terms of dollars or personnel like many other organizations. So for us, we're not beholden to anybody. We just try to do what we think is the right thing to do. And do we make mistakes? Absolutely. But we're, human just like everybody else, and we're trying to do the right thing. And I think for the most part, it's worked.
Yeah, no doubt. And I want to switch gears because I don't want to forget to ask you. You mentioned some free training that's on your website,
Yeah.
and you talked about families in particular,
Mhm.
family readiness. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Is that something that's online, or is that where somebody goes in person to an event, or do you come to an agency? How does that work?
So that is in person. And like I said, that was something that was created by Joe Willis. He is our Chief Learning Officer. He created 4 programs. It's called the Responder Readiness Series. It's the Responder Readiness, Supervisor Readiness, Family Readiness, and Provider Readiness. And what it does is it basically talks about resiliency and preparing yourself for stress and the career. And it's a really unique course because, recently somebody said, well, what history, what research, what doctor, what this, what that, what psychologist. It's not about that. Not everything has to be underwritten by a psychologist. And while it is
Mhm.
based in research, it's really about resiliency and stress and how we react to it. And how we communicate with people. So FirstNet, built with AT&T, they really loved it so much that they financed us doing this. So what it is we have a schedule on our website. We're in Illinois. There's quite a few of them in Illinois. I think there's 10 in Illinois, Kansas, Ohio, Wisconsin, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and there's more coming because of this grant. So basically, it can be a 1 day, a 2 day, a 3 day series where you have the responder and the provider. You have the different family members. So there is one just for families. So you have to go to our website and see where it is. And obviously, we can bring it to people if they want it. We do work with um, the I'm sorry, the first responder conferences, but that's a paid event and they do that around the country. But this particular free event is something that you would have to go to our website and check out the locations. And if you want it brought to you, let us know.
That's actually where I was headed next is if we like say I wanted the family readiness training
Hmm.
to come to it where in Wichita, Kansas, where our agency is, because we're looking at trying to build out some programming for families, we would just call you up and make arrangements to and see if it worked out.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yep, that's exactly it. Yeah. And it's a great, I mean, like I said, it's a great program. It's very unique because it does talk about specifically how we react to stress, how we can react better, how can we communicate better. What's our plan if there is an emergency? Especially for the families. How, the relation, the career affects people and not just from a emotional perspective being the trauma that you suffer, but just administratively, and of course nowadays with the social stuff, how your body reacts physically. It's a really good course. I really enjoyed it. I've never seen anything like it. So when I attended it the first time, it was kind of cool. I was like, oh, this is very interesting. And then of course it was based out of a there was part of it was based out of a book. It's called Stress, how to get good at it. Let me think of the book name. So I had to buy the book and read it. Let me let me look really quick and see what the name of that book is. It's actually on my nightstand behind me, but because I don't have my glasses on it, I won't be able to see it from here.
Yeah, I can relate. Well, great.
I
That's good information to have though for obviously for myself, but for anyone who's listening, if you want to bring it to your agency, just get a hold of you guys and kind of go from there.
Yes, absolutely. And if they go to 1sthelp.org, that would be the website. Oh, it's called The Upside of Stress by Kelly
Oh yeah,
McGonigal.
Kelly
Yeah,
McConnell. Yep,
yeah, yep.
we're
That's
familiar with that here.
McGonigal. Yeah, yep, yep.
Yes, very good stuff. Excellent. So So you started with Blue Help, and now, which I just learned about this when we first started talking, now there's First Help, which Blue Help is a program underneath First Help. So everything's now been expanded to other first responder professions. So can you talk a little bit about how that came to be? My guess is you had people begging you, saying, "Hey, what about us?" And that's kind of how it started. But
Yeah.
but maybe you can explain a little bit more.
No, that's pretty much how it started. And of course, we all have full-time jobs. We're like, sure, we have nothing else to do. Let's do this. Um, so we, yeah, so we had fire families coming to us. We always included corrections officers. We consider corrections part of law enforcement, and they've always been part of it from day one. Because if they go on the wall in DC, they would go on ours, and corrections do go on the wall in DC. So we also included dispatch because we felt like they were so close to law enforcement and the officers. And even though they weren't really split out in any special way, we just treated them the same as we treated the law enforcement officers. We don't have a lot of dispatch suicides, but the ones we do, we've welcomed to the family. We have a private Facebook page with a couple hundred, well, more than a couple hundred family members on there that get to talk and everything. So they're all engaged with each other on the same page. So last year, the firefighters came to us and said, "Well, where's my blanket? Where's my care package? How come my
Mhm.
friend who he died by suicide? How come his wife isn't getting any support?" So we said, you know what? When we first started this, it actually we had actually called it First Alliance before it was even Blue Help. That's a little known fact. We still have all the old logos that we hardly ever saw.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we called it First Alliance because we were going to do it for everybody. But it just seemed very overwhelming in the beginning. And because we only lived in law enforcement, we just said we don't know what we're getting into. So we scaled it back to Blue Help. Now we've scaled it back up to First Help. So what happened is we changed our name legally from Blue Help to First Help. And we are, DBA Blue Help, DBA Red, Gold, and White. So Red Help is for fire, Gold Help is for dispatch and telecommunications, White Help is for EMS. So they're all programs of First Help. It's the same 501c3 number, same group of people. Well, now more because we have firefighters on board and things and dispatch families. So now we've got the four programs. So that they have four different websites: redhelp.org, goldhelp.org, bluehelp, and whitehelp.org. So they all have their own honor wall, their own counter. They get their own care packages. Their blankets are red instead of blue or gold or white, depending on the profession. And we have one dinner now a year where we'll include everybody. And they are invited to all the events. They are eligible for the scholarships. Same thing that we're doing for Blue. We just expanded it. And part of that also came about because I don't know if you know this, but we're working with the Life Message and Veterans Resource Outreach Center in Texas to build a 22-acre memorial park. And
Mm.
there's 22 acres of land on Lake Rowlett in Texas, and I'm sorry, it's in Rowlett, Texas, on Lake Ray Hubbard, and it is going to be a memorial park for all first responders and military veterans lost to suicide, and it's tremendous. It's an incredible project. It's moving. It's heartwarming. It's they can't go on the wall in DC, so we're going to give them their own 22 acres of land and make it really special and beautiful for them. So now we
I
have
didn't know that. Yeah,
everybody.
that's
Yeah, we do a lot of stuff under the radar that just and later
you need
comes
to
out.
tell more people what
Yeah,
you're doing.
yeah. You know what? I think that's one of our biggest problems, and people tell us that all the time. We don't brag enough about what we do, because again, we don't. To us, we're just doing what we need to do. So it seems disingenuous to post 100 selfies like, look, here I am here I am talking to this person, here I am, when we're doing it because we just need to do it, and when the park is huge, obviously we make the big deal out of that in the coming months, and as it's been ramping up more and more, but I don't know, yeah, we don't brag enough about it. Yeah, we're not good at that.
And I get what you're saying though about this particular area because it's so sensitive and you don't want to put it out there in a way to bring too much attention to it, like you're like, look at what I'm doing. But I think the more you talk about it, I think the more people know about you, they hear about you, and they can use you as a resource, because I still don't know that everybody knows that Blue Help, or sorry, First Help, is a resource that's available. So I'm coming at it from that perspective, like, just so the more you're out there, the more people can know about you
Yeah,
too.
agreed. And I think this training this year is going to help because we're going to be out in front of a lot more people. Before COVID, we were out in front of. We were really on the uptick, and
Mhm.
then COVID kind of leveled things out, and we kind of sank back down, and now it's ticking back up with everything. And I think too that it's hard with this type of subject because you don't want to appear as an ambulance chaser. So, for instance, if someone submits a suicide to us, we will send the care package to the department. But if they don't put the family's contact information, or the family doesn't put their contact information, we give them their space they need, and when they're ready, they'll come back to us. And if they do put their contact, we'll reply and it will. Tell them what our services are, and some of them take advantage of it right away. Others say I'm not ready, and they will. We just had somebody come back after 2 years, and she said I'm ready to put my dad up there. So it just depends, and it's a very fine line, because it's not like any other kind of death, and it's not. It's private, it's painful. Many of the families witness it. So it's very sensitive. And then when you think, people say, "Well, I thought they get this and that," and it's not a line of duty. You can't just jam a camera in their face and just jump on this
Mhm.
bandwagon because that's not how it is. They do need support, but they need it on a different level than a normal death would.
Well, and I think that's really good that you are so mindful of just giving people, the families, the space that they need, and just like here this is, and then here we are when you're ready.
And don't get me wrong, it's not easy because I want to say, "Hey, we'll buy your Christmas gifts." What are you talking about? I'll give you grocery money. I will, but just take it. But
Yeah.
you can't do that. You have to let them, and that gets hard because we do have this help here, and we do have these resources for them, and you want more people to take advantage, but you can't. Yeah, we have to wait. That's hard for me too, especially because I'm
Mhm.
type A and I'm going and I got to talk to everybody and do stuff right away. So I have this mental list of families that I got to check back with because we haven't heard from them in a certain amount of time, or I don't, and so we'll check in 6 months or a year later and see how they're doing if we haven't heard from them and see if they need anything. And sometimes it's the right time and they say, "Oh, yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm ready now," or "I forgot and I should have contacted you," or we have other families who are ready the next day. "Please help me.
Mhm.
What can you do? How can I talk to somebody else?" kind of thing. So, and that's good too because we're able to connect the families. So if we speak, so recently there was a fire widow. She lost her husband last month, and she's really upset. She doesn't know what to do. So we were able to put her in touch with another widow who's a couple years out that had a similar situation, and they can talk to each other and guide them through this. It's difficult, and unless you've been there, and I haven't been there, I did not lose my husband to suicide. I can only give them so much help. I can listen to them. I can take in what they have to say, and then from what I know of the other families, decide who would be a good fit for them, and then match them, and then that's where they get their support.
And that's brilliant because that's peer support. I mean, really, I mean, you've got people who are peers. They've been through things that are similar on the job, and this is kind of taking that just to the families in this situation. Like you're putting people together that have been through a similar situation
Yeah, that's an,
so
I
they
yeah,
can
I never
support
thought
each
of it
other.
as peer support, but it is, isn't it?
Well, I run a peer support team at work, so it's always on my mind. And anytime I hear something like that, I make that connection because that's
Yeah,
really what seems to be the thing that helps anybody really with anything. It doesn't
yeah.
have to be even in this profession. It's like if you've got people that are kind of going through the same thing, and it's not always the case, but a lot of times that seems to be what is more helpful.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you have a lot of resources. So you must have a lot of volunteers because you're a nonprofit. So you've got all these people making all of these things, these blankets and all these moving parts. So how does all that work? And if somebody wants to volunteer, you're laughing. Are you the one that does it all?
I
Are
know,
you
right? If
quilting in the
anyone
back or?
could see me, I'm laughing hysterically. No, I used to. No, I used to, but not anymore. No, we have so Nicole, she's one of our widows. She sends out all the care packages. So we feed her that
Okay.
information. So it did start with just me, where I was sending the care packages. I was doing everything out of the house. And actually, I still send out our Christmas ornaments myself. Every year, we have the families design Christmas ornaments, and we pick one. and nobody knows what it is until I mail it. So, I sit here packaging up 1,000 Christmas ornaments and sending them out. So there's some stuff that I still like to do. I still hop on social media. So we have, geez, our board is 8 people now. And then we do have a core group of volunteers. I think we're up to about 30 now. And most of it, so we do have a woman who does the embroidery, and she ships the blankets out for us. We do have the widow, Nicole, and now we have a red widow, Robin, who sends out the care packages. And the different events, it just depends on what event it is. Like Sharonda's running Camp April. Um, Shannon is going to run the dinner this year. So but we're very tight, very close. We meet every other week. Whoever wants to join us, whoever of the volunteers find out what's going on, what's needed. We have checklists in the software called ClickUp that we just started, and I'm laughing about that too because I hate it. But it's, like a project management software. And we got to the point where we just needed it because I think if we were still Blue Help, we could have still managed it with a smaller team. But with all these first responders, we had to bring on more volunteers because it's just not manageable anymore, And again, we all have full-time jobs. So, spending 5 years having 2 full-time jobs and, mailing care packages and writing thank you letters and I still try to write the thank you. There's some things that I still try to do as one of the founders because people A, expect it, and B, don't expect it, and C, love it. Because sometimes I get a note saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe I got a thank you note from Karen Solomon. How, with everything that's going on, how can one of the founders be sending me a thank you note?" But I think that's also something that stands us out from the rest. We are very accessible, people say that to us all the time. They're like, "I can't believe I talked to Steve Huff today, or Jeff McGill, or Karen Solomon." I'm like, what are you talking about? Why wouldn't you talk to us, But we don't ever want to become that conglomerate where we're not in touch anymore with what everybody needs or wants, and not just the families, but the officers who support us and the people who make the donations, because they're incredibly important to us. They keep us going. The some of the notes that we get with the donations, I'll sit at the post office and cry some days when I open the mail because it's just, it's just beautiful what we've been able to give, this gift that we've given these families and these officers. So for us, we want to keep that connection, and make sure that we don't ever lose that. So we like keeping the team small. And we also don't want it to get out of control where, we're all going to pay ourselves $500,000 a year. Yeah, no, we're not. We don't even, because we don't want it to become something. We want it to stay true to the original mission. And the original mission was, we absolutely have to start hiring people. We did. We hired 2 family members this year. So because we can't function anymore just as volunteers. So we hired 2 family members, and we'll, eventually have to hire more people. But at the end of the day, we just want to do the right thing. Again, I mean, I keep saying that. That's so dumb, but that's how we kind of are.
Well, whatever you're doing is working. So keep it up.
Thanks.
One thing that I did want to ask you about before we sign off is retirees. I mean, I briefly mentioned it in the beginning about keeping track of retirees that die by suicide, but are there any programs that you guys offer for retirees, geared towards retirees? Obviously, you mentioned families, providers, the responders themselves, supervisors, but I'm curious if that's something you guys have looked at.
Not at this time, and obviously we welcome retirees as volunteers. And something like Copline, they are all retired law enforcement. They to do that that's the hotline that officers can call if they need help. So we don't have anything specific to retirees at this time, no, but there are resources out there for them. And if anybody ever contacted us, we would try to connect them. We would find them a resource if they needed it, but we don't.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's good to know. And I mean, it sounds like all of the resources that you have would benefit a retiree also.
Yeah, so it definitely would. And we have a website. It's also connected through our regular website. It's called firsthelp.net, one at sthelp.net. And that is a searchable database by zip code, and it gives you different nonprofits and different providers throughout the country that help first responders. So that's always like a first step for somebody, so they could look there and say, oh, because if we don't know we'll just type in that database and we'll look and we'll say, hey, why don't you contact this person? They're in your area or they're in the wheelhouse you're looking for. Maybe they can help find you somebody, you know? So we constantly refer people out because we are not a hotline. And there's only certain things that we do, and most of it, it's like I said, it's the prevention training and the postvention support. So if somebody's looking for therapy or they're looking for certain things, we'll try to get them to the people that they need to. Again, we're not a hotline, but we do get some, requests, say asking us, and there's lots of resources on our website too. So
And that's what's so good about you collaborating with all of these other programs, because for something that you may not cover or take care of, you can at least, refer them or point them in the right direction.
and that's super important. It's knowing who else is
Mhm.
out there. Just even if you
Mhm.
don't know who they are, if you've never talked to them, but if you've vetted them, if you know people have gone to their program, you don't necessarily have to be collaborating. You just have to know what's
Mhm.
out there, because it's hard. There's a lot of people out there now, and it's hard to connect with everybody. So we vet as
Right.
much as we can. We go through references, people that we know have been to programs or whatever it is, and try to find out what would be the best people to refer out to.
Yeah, you're right about that. I feel like it's hard to know because there are so many different resources and programs that have surfaced over the last 5 years that there is no way I probably even know what half of them are. And it used to not be that way.
Yeah, that's tough, right? In finding out which ones are which, and which ones are just charge exorbitant amount of money for a service that may not be so hot, and what other ones that are free, or what. Just it's just there's a lot of stuff out there, and we don't claim to know who they all are either. We know certain ones, and we certainly, for instance, like I said, Copline, we'll send people to Copline if they need help, and they have to stay on top of those resources. They have to know because they refer people out to that. That's what the hotline is for. So I would rather send them to
Sure.
the hotline that has that information and is constantly vetting that for them. So those hotlines are
Right.
important.
And I'm sure you've probably heard of the National FOP now has a wellness initiative, and they vet, like they have a process where they will actually vet certain programs before they recommend them so that all of that is streamlined for people who are looking for different things.
Yeah, we haven't been able to find out where that list of vetted resources is yet, but I know that they're working on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a work in progress.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking forward
Well,
to it though.
Karen,
It's another good
yeah,
resource to
oh yeah,
have, especially if they're vetted. Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't really have any other questions, but I just kind of want to make sure that everybody understands a lot of what you said, make sure I understand all of the resources that you mentioned, the training, everything on your website for First Help is available to anyone, any first responder, family member. All they need to do is get a hold of you guys, and all the information's at their fingertips, pretty
That's
much, and
correct.
somebody will respond. Excellent. Great. Is there anything else that I didn't necessarily ask you, whether it be about legislation or about anything you want anyone to know that might be listening, even if it's somebody who might even be struggling or contemplating, taking their own life, or what kind of message, or to any family members that might be going through the loss of a loved one, what would you want to say to anybody?
So first, to anybody who's listening, I had a good friend who used to tell me you can fix anything but death. So please don't let suicide be an option. You can fix anything.
Mm,
You can fix finances, family relationships, new careers, whatever it is. Please don't think that suicide is your only option. And I know it's incredibly difficult to ask for help, but it's the hardest thing you'll do, but it's going to make everything else easier after that. So please, if you do need help, please ask for it. And for the families, again, we are so sorry for your loss, and if there is anything we can do to help you, please let us know, because we do have these resources available to you. I mean, I know one family, they had triplets, and they didn't know where they were going to pay for college. So we there's resources for you, and if we don't know them, we can help you find them. So please reach out if you're struggling as a family who lost a first responder to suicide.
excellent. Thank you so much, Karen. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share, and give us a review. And as always, I want to hear from you. Feedback and suggestions for future topics and guests is always welcome. And as always, a reminder that you aren't alone. There are resources to help, and First Help is just one of many organizations. And remember, we are better together.
I'm just